Yes, Chris, it's been brought to my attention that several members of our community have expressed concern over the historic theater located directly across the street. I've received several items of correspondence and phone calls as to why the council has not responded. I do understand that it is a county building. However, it is in our front yard, literally. And we talk about historic preservation here. We have a historic preservation committee, but yet we're willing to sit by as our history gets demolished, moved, etc. And I think as a council and as a town, we need to represent the people that put us here and have a discussion on what we can do, possibly talk to our county commissioners and county manager in ways we could possibly work together to save those structures that are important to our history.
Mayor, were we ever contacted by the county in any official capacity about the theater? Was Mr. Slater contacted? Was Mr. Medlin contacted? Was there any other discussion with you and the county as far as what they're doing?
Well, yeah, I had a discussion with county manager regarding that, and at that particular time, it was prior to their meeting, which was to be their next scheduled meeting, which is now passed, in which they were expecting a report from their architects, who was to give them a report on that building, the movie theater. That was on their agenda. And I've since learned since that time, the architects made the recommendation to the county for the building to be torn down. And,
But you never shared that conversation with the rest of the council as far as what you had with the county manager?
No. And that was just a general conversation. And she was just informing me of their meeting, which she had put out on their public agenda, that what they would be discussing at their meeting, that upcoming meeting.
Hey, can I make some comments?
Sure.
I've been involved in historic preservation ever since, I guess 1977, 78, definitely since 79, when the Person Place Preservation Society was founded. I've served in that period of time twice as president of it. I was on the council at the time, and that we set up the historic commission, local historic commission, and that was right at the
Councilwoman
time.
Stewart, let me ask you to pull your mic a little bit closer.
Oh,
to you.
okay. Oops. Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I served, was instrumental in helping establish, along with Mr. King, and a citizens committee that served trying to organize it for the local historic commission. And so I feel like that I can speak fairly well on the background of that. There's some things that can be saved, there's some things that can't. I think you need to look into what the ramifications of things are. At one time back earlier, came up about whether to save the First Citizens Bank. That was torn down and this another building put there. We need to, before we jump into anything, I think we need to know what the ramifications of things are for our town. We've had missed sales, and people talk about the effect that not closing Main Street had on the 3 businesses that are there. And we've spent, I'd say, the last 8-10 years trying to revitalize downtown. We've been very fortunate with what we've been able to do. And so, but at one time, we asked the state if we could have a local historic district in the downtown, and the state said no, that the buildings had been changed too much for it to get that kind of designation. Because I can remember saying, well, what about Williamsburg? You know, so many of those buildings were changed a lot in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and they were taken back. But anyway, there has been, when Mr. Franklin was here, he made a concerted effort to try to interest people in entrepreneurs, I guess you'd call them, investors, people into buying the movie theater. I myself I'm very nostalgic about it. I went to it throughout my whole childhood and all through adulthood till it closed. I can remember going with my dad to watch westerns when Mother had a meeting or something. And dating, being there with your high school friends. It was wonderful. That was a different era, and we cannot go back and recapture that. Other places have tried to, and most of them have been unsuccessful because people are either gonna stay at home, COVID didn't help anything, or they want to have many, many more choices. But John tried to market it to these people, get them interested in it, perhaps for a restaurant or apartments. The people that I know that looked at it, they shook their heads. It was too much. They could not see that they could recoup the money that they had. And so those are things that I think we need to weigh seriously, because I think we need to find out what is involved if you have the downtown declared a historic district, which it is not right now. How does that tie the hands of people who might want to buy a building, one of the buildings are still empty, and how will that affect how they open their business or how they run the business? Because I know that there are a lot of caveats that go along with buildings and structures in the historic district. And I think we've got to look at it practically. I mean, my heart would love to see it. It would just be like being in Mayberry again. But we're not living in Mayberry anymore. And I think that we just need to consider that. And sometimes it just seems like to me that sometimes you have to take things like that in consideration. And you can save some things, but then other things you just can't really do. And I feel like, these are supposed to be a reputable people. After all, I think that company is the same one that we are negotiating with about Depot Hill. And so that's just some comments that I'd like to make. I think before we leap in with both feet, we need to investigate how it affects the town and how it will affect the businesses and the growth in downtown. And so those are just my thoughts that I want to share. And I don't expect everybody to agree with me, and it might sound like heresy, but you got to be pragmatic about some things, I think.
Okay, I just wanted to say that, thank you. I just wanted to say that, y'all hear me? I just wanted to say that, in working with the school system for 32 years, I've gone down to the movie theater. We used to take the classes down there to watch movies all the time. And the last time we was going down there, one time we had to, because the marshal said it's unsafe. Do not take those kids down there. The last time I went there, now with my children, everybody was sitting downstairs, but you got to remember, it's not peaches and cream for everybody at the movie theater, because I grew up in the area where we had to wait for the people like me to come in last. And we had to go upstairs. And we had to wait for everybody else to be served before we could get our bag of popcorn. So, and with that movie theater been in there a long time, doing nothing. And the more sit by itself. You know, some things, like she said, cannot be saved. And years ago, over 15, 20 years ago, we had to stop taking the children down there because it was unsafe. I mean, Louisburg Elementary, right down on the corner on West River Road, we would walk to the movie theater during Christmas, let me see a Christmas movie, different classes every day. We kept the movie theater getting busy, and it was great. It was super. We really enjoyed, the students enjoyed it, because some of them had never been to a movie. But when they stopped us from coming, because it was unsafe, and now it's been sitting, it would be cheaper to demolish it and start from the groundwork up. Because, like this, if some mortar cannot be saved, somebody's gonna crumble.
Anyone else?
Mayor, I have a comment to make. I think that a lot of the people in the public assume that this council has had something to do with putting this theater out for demolition, in which we read about it in the paper like everyone else. The fact of the matter is, that doesn't come through, we don't own it. I personally wish that there was an opportunity, realistically, not a theater, but a lot of other towns have seen it to repurpose their theaters into new opportunities for their community. In a little town like Louisburg, we're not a Wake Forest. We don't have oodles of opportunity of entertainment. So something like repurposing the theater could be a huge asset for our community if it was able to be saved. My largest concern is, because there are two different types of historic preservation. There's the federal level, in which is, I think, mostly what you're talking about, where it's very hard to attain.
Well, that's to get on the national
And
register.
to get on the national. And then we have our own, we have our own historic guidelines of territory. Perhaps what we could consider is changing what our map establishes as historical, so that tomorrow, somebody could come in and buy all of Nash Street and say, I see a mall going here, and there's, because it fits the criteria for Mr. Slater, he's like, okay, we can't stop you.
But there are definite guidelines. If you look in the ordinances of the town, under the local historic commission, there are definite things that have to be met before something can
But none
happen.
of our downtown is incorporated
I
in
know.
that. Maybe that's
I know,
what we
but
need
you've
to
got
consider.
follow a state thing in order to get there.
Okay.
I mean, you know, you just can't be the law unto yourself, I don't think.
No,
Mr.
I-
Callahan, is that so?
That's correct.
Okay.
Is that something that we need to look into though?
That's why I'm saying, you need to ask the state, what are the ramifications
Right.
gonna be before we commit to saying, yes, we're gonna leap in and fight the county on this.
No, I'm,
You know, that's what I'm saying.
I'm looking at
Because
the
the county
future.
also, county also has a county historic commission also. But I just think we need to, like, you know, agreeing with you that we need to, seek answers before we commit to anything.
Right, I know that the county met this evening. I don't know if they discussed it any further or not. But I personally can see opportunity for our community. We're very limited anyway, especially in our downtown. Although I'm sure that the county will benefit from a justice center. unfortunately, that's not something for everyone in the community to do. I don't know if you guys like hanging out at the Justice Center, but that's not where I wanna go, for fun. So, that's what I'm wondering, if we can look, maybe, our planning director and Mr. Slater can perhaps check into it and get back to us for future.
And in addition to that, yes, I concur with all that has been said, especially seeing how, if we could qualify for historical district. However, in that process, it may not be completed for this particular building here. You see, because, again, the architects that was hired by the county to give their opinion about that building was the same architects that we are using for Depot Hill. Now, if we ask for some more information, then it seems to me that we're going against the opinion of architects that we trust enough to provide a service for us.
Mayor, these are mechanical, that company is real large, and that these were the mechanical, it's my understanding, I believe, that it was the mechanical engineers that deemed it structurally unsound. The architects are the ones that do all the drawing things, but mechanical engineers are the ones that can tell you whether that thing stands a chance of falling in. And I mean, you know, I can well understand the questions of liability. And if we intervene, would we become liable, or or are we going to become liable as citizens because we are county residents as well? There's a lot of questions in there, that seems like to me. And it seems like that maybe they should have been, you know, people that wanted to do this, maybe should have looked a long time ago rather than right here at the very last second.
I feel like we're in a time of growth now. If you look at the previous census over the past 8 decades, we actually saw population decline, and we're now finally seeing growth through several neighborhoods coming. Maybe they just need time to find the right investors who are willing to invest in. I'm not suggesting this town drop $2-3 million to restore this building, but perhaps with time, someone will. And all I'm asking is we give the county time and let them know that we as citizens of Louisburg would like to keep our theater and not see it torn down immediately.
Mayor, I have one question. Being practically the newest member of the council, do you know when you all, or when the council made a decision to enter into agreement with the county that they could have this building? Do you know when that happened? When y'all,
the town never owned the building.
the town never owned it?
No, it was
Okay.
always a privately owned building in which the county purchased it from the
Okay.
We own the building next to it,
Okay.
the old
This
Ford
one, the small building over here. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mark, for that. So we're moving on now to the next item, the